Joe Russell here again for the Trump Pardon Arnold channel. This should be the second video in a series. Once again, we are trying to get President Trump's attention. We need your help. I need to get our names in front of him for a pardon. So we're trying to get Sheriff Robert Arnold, me, Joe Russell, and Robert Arnold's uncle, John Vanderveer. We were prosecuted in 2016 by Jack Smith, the same Jack Smith that went after President Trump. Back in 2018, I believe, is when they started prosecuting him. Cecil Van Deventer, who was also under Jack Smith, was going after President Trump as well. So recently, which I thought was kind of funny, was back during that time, there were phone taps that were put on the phones during the January 6th. I'd call them riots. It was not a thing where they were trying to take down the government. But there were phone taps put on several of the senators. Marsha Blackburn, Bill Hagerty here in Tennessee, they had their phones tapped. And there's been a lot of upset people in D.C. lately about that. And I kind of sit back and laugh because I'm like, well, now you know how it feels. We were prosecuted and persecuted and attacked, not only just politically, but physically. My family was attacked. And so that would kind of explain why we gave up. Why would you take a dive in something like this? You're out trying to protect your reputation. There's all this money that's going to be involved. When you start seeing your family attacked, it's time to wrap it up and go home, because you know that you can't fight the Leviathan of the federal government. So in the beginning, we had a company called Jailcigs. Robert Arnold went to a trade show, saw the product somewhere, and I think it was North Carolina or some state. I don't even remember what it was at this point. Came back, said, hey, there's this new product out there. We ought to take a look at doing this at our facility. Okay, so looked into it. The only company out there making them was Crossbar. Well, Crossbar wanted you, the taxpayer, to buy them, and then us at the jail to inventory them, where stuff disappears all the time. And then they wanted us to handle the money, just like commissary, because no commissaries were doing them at this time. Even to this day, there's a lot of commissaries that still don't do electronic cigarettes. And so I, in my opinion, did not feel like it was in the best interest for the taxpayer to be buying a product and turning around and selling it at the jail. That just was not something that should legally be done. And that's not what we're in the business of. We're in the business of housing people for trial. That's what the adult detention center is all about. So, you have carrot sticks that you put out there to kind of make things comfortable, because you never know who's going to be there. It could be your uncle, it could be your dad, your brother. It could be that your mom had a bad night and got a DUI somewhere, coming home from a Christmas party or something. Who knows? You never know why people are going to be at the jail. And 9 times out of 10, it's usually nothing, but you got to treat them like a human being. I know that a lot of people in the public eye want to sit there and go, lock them up, throw away the key, throw them under the jail, don't care a thing about them. Right up to the point until it's their brother or their aunt or some close relative, and then all of a sudden it's all this human rights abuses. So that's what Jailcigs was all about. You got a person who comes rolling into the jail. Something's happened. They already have an addictive personality because they smoke already. So they're a smoker, they might be a drinker or whatever, and they're in the middle of a high stress situation. And so what ends up happening is it'd be nice to have an electronic cigarette that they could go sit in the corner, puff on, and calm down. And that keeps things from getting out of hand at the jail. Next thing you know, if you don't have something like that, that's where all these inmate fights break out. That's where all the that's where all the guards are getting hurt. And then there's lawsuits everywhere. And then you, the taxpayer, have to pay for the lawsuits. People die at the jail. And so, you run into those kind of issues that you wouldn't have if you had a mellowed out jail population. So that's what Jailcigs was for. It was just another great carrot stick, and it worked. The people that were the naysayers were the ones that didn't like Robert Arnold to start with. There's actually still 2 companies out there that are selling them these days. They're still selling the wrong way, where they're making the counties buy them, and instead of just selling them online and mailing them into the jails. And it's always up to a sheriff. A sheriff is in charge of his jail. That's his kingdom. And nobody else can tell a sheriff what is and is not contraband at their own jail. That's what this is all about. So we would ask them, hey, if we sold to friends and family in your county, can we mail them in? Yes or no? And that was the deal. There was no contract. It was just, is this product classified as contraband? Because if there's supposed to be a contract, then why doesn't Amazon and why doesn't, I don't know, Walmart.com and everybody else that sells books and magazines and whatever, well, why don't they have an agreement? Why don't they have a contract to get stuff mailed into the jail? It's the exact same thing. And nobody else wanted to say that that was possible, that that was allowed. Well, guess what? At a federal facility, as I sit here today on a Wednesday, it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, mail calls in about 2 hours. There's going to be books, magazines, letters, cards, and all kinds of stuff delivered in the mail to inmates at federal facilities all across the United States by the jail personnel. The jail personnel are going to come over and they're going to hand all this stuff out. And that's the same business plan as how Jailcigs was operated. So, but here's what happened. So, Virgil Gammon, who was number 2 under Truman Jones when they lost the election in 2010, felt slighted because Virgil Gammon was supposed to inherit the kingdom. He was going to be the next sheriff of Rutherford County once Truman Jones decided no longer to run. Then Robert Arnold upset that process in 2010 when he got elected. Robert Arnold was kind enough and wanted to keep some of the people around for their expertise and was smart enough to keep some of the people around, so he employed Virgil Gammon, who basically from day one stabbed him in the back. Every time there was an article written, there was always somebody that was calling the press about every little thing. We would get a story from the back of the jail, somebody got hurt in the jail, and some guard would come tell us about it, and it had happened maybe 10 minutes ago, and then 2 more minutes later, we're getting a call from the newspaper. So somebody was intentionally making sure that every time something happened bad, that Virgil Gammon, or not, that Sheriff Arnold was being blamed for it. Some of the things that people don't know is that Virgil Gammon's son was in jail for raping, and it's public record, raping a 14-year-old. He was 28 at the time. So in 2014, when all this started, his son was spending the year there at the Rutherford County Adult Detention Center. Robert Arnold had won re-election in 2014. I think Virgil's son had already been there for a few months already. We had allowed Jailcigs into the jail, and yes, I owned the company. Straight up, we did. And those products were being mailed into the inmates. Matter of fact, I think his son even got one. And so the only thing I can fear is that Virgil was either mad that we didn't put him in on part of the business and cut him in. All Virgil had to do if he wanted to be sheriff was come on out, join the party, jump out there and run like a man. But he never did run for office against Robert. He wouldn't run against Truman. And so all he had to do was jump out there. If he thought he had a better product to be a better sheriff, then he just needed to jump out there and run for office and be the next guy. So that didn't happen. I think Virgil's son left at the end of 2014. I think he finally timed out or whatever, or maybe he went somewhere else. I don't know how long he was in for jail. I don't know anything about that case. If anybody want to follow up on that and email me or put it in the comments, that'd be great. So anyway, but Virgil was confidential witness number 1. We always knew he was. This whole investigation got started because, and this comes from a lawsuit that Virgil Gammon filed against the county when Virgil got fired. And one of the interesting things is I found a book behind his filing cabinet on how to oust a public official. So he was studying up on how to get rid of Robert so he could be anointed the sheriff, which didn't happen either. But anyway, so when all this got started, Virgil, who was confidential witness number 1, went and it's in the lawsuit that he filed against the county. He said that I was selling electronic cigarettes to the inmates and that I was secreting funds out of the building there at the Rutherford County Adult Detention Center. Now, like I said in the first video, I don't know what idiot's going to believe that story. Well, that was what was used to investigate us. So even though we were cleared by local, which I figure Jennings Jones would have just, he stepped back and said, well, this guy's local politics, I'm not going to get involved. So, him clearing us wouldn't really made a hill of beans difference anyway. But the state TBI came in and looked at stuff, and they cleared us as well for wrongdoing. But that wasn't good enough. So somebody else got on the phone and called the Obama administration. And what actually ended up happening was somebody called our local governor, who then called the Obama administration and brought the feds in. And the only person I can think of that had enough pull for something like that was, and I can't think of the governor's name at the time, in 2014, but Ernest Burgess and Sheriff Arnold were at odds with each other. There was a letter written by Rick Womack, who mentions that he was told by a staffer for the governor's office that they had been instructed to go after our boy down there in Rutherford County, who was Sheriff Arnold, and that they had been instructed to call the U.S. Department of Justice, and which happened, and Robert got prosecuted. So that's kind of where it's at. That's the story. That's the way things went down. The big thing I think everybody needs to understand is we never intended to break the law. I'm a smart guy. I know what the law is. I know exactly what the law is. My wife's a licensed attorney. Her dad is a Murfreesboro city cop. I can read what the laws are. And I would sit there and argue with these people all the time. With the comptroller's office and with, there was a guy that worked for them named Eugene, and he and I would go round and round and round about what the law was, and had a lot of fun with it. I knew what the law was. I knew how the law worked. I knew how it's supposed to work. I didn't realize that people would do everything they could to twist it to fit a narrative. And so I was really surprised by that. So anyway, but we had a website that sold electronic cigarettes to friends and family only. No inmate ever bought an electronic cigarette. That didn't happen. There was no inmate trust funds that were ever involved. There were no county funds that were ever involved. There was no inventory that was brought in. Now the big thing was we did not have, Jailcigs was not exclusive to Rutherford County. We were in 4 states. We were over 20 jails we were shipping to. And the nice part was, it took all the hassle and inventory requirements and money handling requirements and all that. It took out of the sheriff's office. You didn't have to deal with it. We dealt with it. And then we came back and made donations because we cared for the sheriff and the sheriff's staff. But before I get into all that later, so the company was formed. We had a product. We were selling it. Inmates couldn't buy it. And there was 2 other companies that were allowed to come in, Crossbar and Newell's. Their designs had been approved. They were just basically non-contraband. We were like, yeah, And when the Newell's guy came to see me, because he came to my office and said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about electronic cigarettes. And I was like, that's fine, come on down. And I told him about our business. And he said, well, that's not the way we do business. And I was like, well, I don't want to handle this stuff, but you guys are more than welcome to mail those things in to the guys at the jail. If you sell them to friends and family and they come in, they'll get delivered because it's coming in the mail. And it was funny because like 8 boxes showed up of electronic cigarettes from this company called Newell's, Neulls. About 4 or 8, I think it was 8 boxes showed up. And so those came in, and I called the guy up and I said, what are you doing? He says, well, you said we can mail them in, just sell them to your inmates and then send us a check. And I was like, you didn't even listen to the conversation we had. And so after we shipped them back, and I told him, you can mail them into the inmates to the inmates, but we're not selling to the inmates. I'm not carrying inventory. I'm not handling money because inmates don't have any money. So all I could have done is given those away for free. The bad part was the way he set himself up. I could technically have just walked back in the jail and handed all those out because they came in the mail and we didn't order them. county tax dollars were not liable for that shipment, but I was kind and I shipped them back to him. When he started getting questioned about them, they were waffling like, like we were actually trying to do something illegal. But yet I had told him that he could send his stuff in. When we first got started, we were buying Crossbar electronic cigarettes, and I talked to the guy at Crossbar, and I said, hey, we're going to sell these online to friends and family. We're not buying them through the county. It's not the county taxpayers' money that needs to pay for these things. And he was kind of surprised. He's like, well, I don't know how to do that. And I was like, just develop a website. You sell them like normal merchandise. It's nothing hard. So anyway, so that's what we did. So, anybody, friends and family, could go online, buy one. You could pick out which location the jail was, and then they were sent in a secure package. And it was funny because I even had a meeting with Virgil Gammon for about an hour, and he was so red-faced. I could tell how frustrated he was because I told him about the business model and who was involved and how things were working and how things were legal. And I looked at him and I said, Virgil, tell me how I can make this more legal than it already is. And his one suggestion was, well, maybe you need to individually mail them in a white envelope one at a time. And I was like, well, they should be better if they came in a box so that they're secure. There's a list, and that way nothing gets stolen and stuff like that. And I also wouldn't get torn up in the mail, So anyway, they didn't like that idea. He just was so angry that he was not part of that deal. And there was always issues with the Access Secure Pack stuff that went down with Keefe Commissary. Keefe Commissary was brought in by Truman Jones, and a contract was signed, and nothing went out for bid there, and it was supposed to. Legally, it was supposed to. And he just brought that company in, and then they started sending in commission checks. One thing that was never, ever, ever due, Rutherford County, was a commission check for electronic cigarettes that went into that jail. There was nothing due. There was no contract. We didn't have contract with any jail anywhere. But what we did do was we came back and we donated goods and services. And we were in the process of donating to Rutherford County. We had finally saved up enough money to start buying goods and stuff. We had redesigned and redecorated and remodeled the SHU, which is where everybody comes in when you get processed and you're brought in to be processed into the jail. And we were getting ready to buy some computers, and we had already purchased $8,000 worth of inmate inventory bags. And so that was done. And the funny part was the bank records somehow got changed, but I have witnesses. And I have the paperwork. I have a copy of my bank records of where we did the transaction. So I have proof. And then somebody went back and changed my banking statements. But I have a copy before that got done. And so, and I've got witnesses because, there was issues trying to run the credit card, and I had to make phone calls, and we had to order with the company, and stuff was on order to come in. And so everything was on the up and up. We were doing everything just like we were treating every other county that was in the state of Tennessee. And the other 3 states that we were shipping to. Nothing's changed. So anyway, back to how Jailcigs is legal is that if you don't have a contract, and you can't have a contract because why would an outside company have a contract with a county if there's no money flowing through the county? The county's not buying anything. The county is not being encumbered by anything. The county is, they're not granting permission for anything. We're selling stuff to people out on the street. How is the county supposed to be having a contract that says we could sell something out on the street? Just because I work there doesn't make a bit of difference. So, because I had a real estate license at the time. I was also selling real estate. Was I supposed to have a contract with the county that said, oh, if you sell a house, well, the county's supposed to get a cut of that too? It's the same process. So, anyway, so that's the way that this whole thing went down. I know a lot of people's got their feelings hurt over this. A lot of people really like Robert Arnold. You need to still continue to be a proponent of his and in favor of him and help him out. Like I said in the last video, we even have a website for this, by the way. It is TrumpPardonArnold.weebly, because it's a free website, .com. So TrumpPardonArnold.weebly.com. You can go there. You can find all this information. I encourage everybody to, and I'll put links down in the comment section below. I think is what you're supposed to say. I'll do all that, and then we'll be able to, if anybody can get in touch with me, I'd appreciate some help. If you happen to know anybody in the White House, that's what we're looking for. Alice Johnson is the pardon czar. We've got paperwork that's, I think, is on its way up there now for the pardon application. Even though we got a pardon application in during the first Trump administration, we're assuming at this point that all that was thrown away during the Biden administration. So anyway, but please help us if you can. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video. More to come.